Hi everyone, today I am going to talk about what it means to be codependent. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, I'm Paige Abbott, registered psychologist in the province of Alberta. It's been a while since I've done a video, so I'm happy to be back. I wish I had a reason that I could say I've been away for a while, but just haven't really had anything kind of rumbling around on my mind that inspired me to make a video. But I did want to come back on and talk about one of the things that I work with every day in my clinical practice, which is codependency. I think that there's still a lot of misinformation out there about what it means to struggle with codependency. And I think that's because the origins of codependency go back for multiple decades now. And originally the focus was on a very narrow part of relational dynamics. And the focus on codependency was basically if you were the partner of somebody who has addiction, and specifically addiction to substances, so drugs or alcohol, and you were the partner that was supporting that individual, that was really what codependency was based on. So it had a lot of connections to the ideas of enabling and how you're actually dysfunctionally sort of supporting this person who has addiction and may or may not be exploring recovery. As time has gone on, though, I think codependency and the understanding of it has really broadened. And now we're starting to recognize that codependency basically is its own manifestation of addiction or an impulsive or compulsive behavior or a problem behavior, if you want to think of it that way. But it's manifesting in relationships rather than with substances or food, like an eating disorder would, or gambling or something like that. So the people who struggle with relationships or codependency basically can feel just as much debilitation and impact in their lives from that as someone with a sex addiction or a drug or alcohol use issue, because relationships are so all-encompassing. So if people don't know how to go about those in a healthy way, it can be very debilitating and can really make your world feel quite challenging. Because if you think about it, relationships are with us everywhere that we go. They're there in our personal lives as well as in our professional and educational lives. So with this broadening idea of codependency, what sorts of things are we talking about that may come in and be problematic for people who start to struggle with relationships? It can take a variety of different forms. Some of the ways that it can manifest is around people pleasing, so wanting to make sure that other people are taken care of, that they're okay, that their needs are being met. This can link to conflict avoidance. Some people who identify as codependents, they recognize that they're really scared to engage in any conflict because that feels very upsetting and very stressful for them. So basically they've developed multiple different coping mechanisms to try to mitigate any conflict that may be happening in their lives. Codependents often struggle to identify what they need and to speak up for that. Some people may know what they need, but struggle to communicate and advocate for it. Some people may not truly actually know what they need because they have become so accustomed to talking and trying to connect with what other people need and make them happy rather than looking at themselves. So some people with codependency may not even really know what their preferences are for things, even basic things in life, down to preferences for brands of products to buy, foods that they want to eat, places that they want to go, activities that they want to do. But it can also come up in other bigger parts of life. So what do they need in a relationship? What works? What doesn't work? So it does lead people who struggle with relationships in this way to be vulnerable to being taken advantage of, to being abused, to being neglected, mistreated, because they have such a strong sense of allegiance and alliance to a relationship. And basically it's the brain's mission to make other people happy, but that can be at the expense of self. Those are often some of the hallmark symptoms of someone who is struggling with codependency, is that you see them being in unhealthy and dysfunctional relationship dynamics and really suffering, but not being able to really recognize that. Although they may connect that they're anxious or depressed or have low self-esteem or may even be carrying quite a bit of anger and resentment, but they're not quite sure why or what to do with that. People with codependency also do sometimes struggle with denial patterns, so denying their own feelings, denying kind of that internal reality that they have calling to them at some times, but the brain is accustomed to pushing that down in order to appease and just meet the needs of the situation. There may also be some patterns of control, so basically wanting to kind of manipulate other people. I know that can sound harsh, and a lot of people who have codependency don't want to acknowledge that their behavior is manipulative, but when it comes down to it, we're not meaning this in a sinister way. There's no malintent there, but they definitely are trying to control and manage a situation, including other people's thoughts and feelings, which again often harkens back to that fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, and wanting to appease and make other people happy. There may also be some compliance patterns, so going along with things, not speaking up, not making their needs known. Again, that may be that they don't even know what their needs are, or they do, but just don't want to ruffle any feathers or rock the boat. How do you know if things have gone beyond just some of these patterns that can exist in normal, healthy human relationships to where it's crossed that line into codependency? This is a really good question, and it is a difficult one to answer in sort of a carte blanche general way on a video like this. It would require a more specialized and individual conversation with a trained healthcare provider. But in general, we start to see problems when there are problems. So meaning if you're feeling a lot of consequence in your life relationally, if you're not having the type and the quality of relationships that you would like, if you're also struggling with co-occurring low self-esteem, maybe some mental health issues with anxiety or depression, there may even be some physical health symptoms that you're experiencing, because often people who are struggling with codependency, they are holding in and repressing a lot of emotional energy, and that can contribute to issues in the tissues. So there can be undiagnosed or even diagnosed like joint or chronic pain, which can be related to some of these relational patterns. So essentially, if you're starting to feel that there's an impact, that your life and your world is not how you would like it to be, despite some attempts, despite some awareness and some desires for change, you're still noticing challenges in relationships and that you're not having the quality of life and relationship that you would like, this is probably a good indication that it may be time for some additional support. And when it comes to treatment, there are certainly lots of self-help, self-management things that people can do. Melody Beattie is the quintessential kind of writer and discusser of codependency in the self-help literature world. There are codependency support groups that may be available virtually or even in person in your area. And there are individual healthcare providers who work in this area so that they can get to know you and talk about specific scenarios with you. Typically, the recovery process involves looking at communication, boundaries, self-esteem, getting to know yourself. And I know some of these things may seem a bit scary, but it'll all happen bit by bit and in the ways that it needs to. And it all leads to some very exciting changes and developments, mainly that you start to feel more ownership and more empowerment in your life, and you start to have the types of relationships that you would like to see, that feel reciprocal, that feel fulfilling, and that provide you the needs that you have and what you deserve. So codependency is a really interesting world. I would encourage you to keep learning more. There are lots of articles and resources and things online. Talk to some local healthcare providers in your area who may specialize in this issue. And if you do certainly feel that you're having an issue with this, either on its own or in conjunction with other problem behaviors, I really do hope that you'll reach out to healthcare providers in your area that can provide some support and provide provide some resources and suggestions that are personalized to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's nice to be back. And if you do have any suggestions for future videos, I'm always happy to hear those in the comments. Thanks, and take care for now. Bye.